Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. We just bought this 3/4 inch DeWalt, their big DCF 964 with VTEC guy. As the one we've tested on the channel before, we borrowed. And when a howitzer like this shows up, you sort of want to just get to breaking things simply because you can. Come along with us today as we test front wheel drive bearing adapter kits, like bearing service sets that we all purchased. They don't only work on front wheel drive applications, but that's probably the most common and often how they're referred to. You use these to push out old and press in new wheel bearings, and also hubs in the case you have press and style hubs. We're going to tax all these sets that all look practically the same but are separated massively in price and presumably thread quality and strength, from 50 to 70 bucks up to 150. The auto parts store rental, that's a whole 250 if you buy it, all the way up to $800 for this kit, with half-inch drive impacts moving up in size to see what they can do along the way, eventually up to this guy, as well as provide some data supported tips and tricks for how to get the most out of these tool sets with the impact you happen to have handy. And in order of price, it's going to start with this Winmax 23-piece front-wheel drive bearing adapters puller press replacement installer remover toolkit. That's just 50 bucks, easy for me to say. The reason these sets are common and more popular is you can press in wheel bearings at home, in a garage, in a driveway, for loads cheaper. And one of the reasons it's so much cheaper is this job is often done at a shop in a shop press. Take the knuckle off, press out the bearing, press in the new bearing, and this requires an alignment when you're done. So by doing it at home, you're both paying less than a shop might charge you, and you're avoiding having to pay for an alignment that you may not have needed. To do this, each kit comes with a driving bolt, some washers for that bolt to ride up against, and plates, tubes or cups, and adapters. Choose the adapter that just fits into your wheel bearing diameter and push it out into the receiving side's tube and plate. That drive bolt has to survive the process though. High pressure grease or grease of any kind is practically mandatory for that to happen, and yet even still, it's almost like every guy's rite of passage to nuke one of these things at one point in their life. Let's maybe find some shortcuts to avoid that for you, and maybe this $50 kit is just the ticket. Let's see. To find out, our dyno is sort of the perfect candidate, as it turns out, as it measures how tight a bolt gets as a result of bolt turning or impacting in this case. If you're running a kit like this by hand, sure, if you want to get those reps in, but it can take a lot of ugga-duggas even for an impact, so can't recommend it. We've calibrated our famed dyno here into a custom tons of force setting. Considering we know the acting hydraulic force surface area of our system, it's fairly easy math and just takes some deep menus and programming to do. Each forcing screw bolts will get the same amount of grease by weight applied to where the hex nut interacts with that bolt. It's pretty funny process weighing out this grease. Now, for example, using an M18 mid-torque here, we can see how many tons of pressing power we have on tap with this kit. Your favorite shop is likely to have at least 10 ton, usually 20 ton press on hand, so we'll be able to compare to that in peak capability before things go sideways. The M18 mid-torque, if this is your only weapon, maxes out at 4.7 tons, and there's no damage going on yet. Something I've long wondered though is what happens when you impact on the long hex nut and hold the bolt head with the wrench instead of impacting on the head and holding the nut with the wrench. Seen a lot of guys use them this way, but my understanding is these hex nuts are long so you can access them on the back side of most knuckles with a standard flat wrench. This results in, after stalling out the M18 mid-torque, we run it forward and back a few times, 4.7 tons again, so seems same either way, good to know. And that hex nut is looking a little steamy, really shedding a lot of metal dust here, and that's because, well, in part due to hardness. Many of these sets advertise bolt or bolt and nut grades, or at least try to sell you on the appearance of that and talk about proprietary materials. This long nut in the set is way too low a hardness to register on the Rockwell C scale, so we get negative readings from it, which means it's sub 15 to 20 HRC, which would make it like a nothing grade or a grade 1 in hardware class. To keep things simple, we're going to be referring to parts in these kits in grades, even though, for example, grade 4 is just for threaded studs, and these adapters, plates, cups aren't really graded in hardware. You do need to use at least some more expensive non-pot metal steel alloys to harden or get up there in hardness, so we'll be referring to them like grade 1, grade 4, grade 5, grade 8, and grade 9 in that order. What's odd about this set is the bolt is, at least in hardness, like a grade 8 or even really a grade 9, which is crazy, but this nut is grade 1 and its washers is riding up against our grade 5. So let's take a look at how you might use these washers. Look at any torque to bolt tension or pulling, in this case formula. A lot of the friction going on is not just the threads, it's the bolt head, the surface under it, skating or marring into washers, and that is important. So we wanted to give some lubricating to these washers with grease a go and see what that changed, if anything. This results in, and this impact isn't enough to damage this 3/4 inch thread bolt yet, though it is trying to, 5.6 tons, an increase of nearly 20%. So a bit of best practice advice for you there, as you won't find this in any of the instructions that we saw. Okay, enough messing around, let's kill some of these sets. The Winmax set, though, through a few goes at it, makes as much as 7.3 tons with the Milwaukee 1/2 inch high torque 2967 and a Forge 6 amp hour battery. The washers are starting to cup and deform around the bolt head at this point. We use 2 washers, or 1 based on the instructions, or however they perform best based on the hardness of their materials. The 3/4 inch DeWalt steps in to really max this setup out. Not to say that you're going to need something like this to kill the kit, but to kill it on its first use and just see how many tons you have on tap with it, yeah, it does help to have around. This splits the washers in half, as they're only about 30 hardness compared to the 46 of the bolt head. Makes sense, but still harder than the plates, so it's better to use these washers than hammer up against that plate. We see as much as, and it's getting worse and worse now, 8.2 tons, and you know what? That's better than we figured for 50 bucks. Coming in at 70 bucks is Orion Motor Tech, and this is the best-selling kit on Amazon, like by far. This has 7,700 reviews and comes with 2 drive screws. For some reason, they're not quite 3/4 inch, or at least would fit pretty loose in a standard 3/4 inch threaded nut. These are coarse thread like the last set. Some sets coming up use fine thread, which helps with efficiency, like less torque needed to get things moving, but has its pros and cons. And well, this is an odd one. The pictures look like phosphate or black oxide coating, and this set's pieces are painted, like even the hex nut, which can't be great for those threads. Not seeing a kit with painted pieces like this. And the sliding screws, as they call them, they say are 8.8 grade, which is at best a bit misleading or accidentally wrong. You see, some sets do advertise grade 8 or grade 9 hardware, but grades are solid, like flat numbers in the SAE standard. Numbers like 8.8 come from metric ISO classes. So Class 8.8 is our SAE grade 5, really nothing all that special to write home about, and we find that be true in this case. Measures 32.8, about grade 5. Both the plates and cups, when removing the paint, were also too low to measure, so like grade 1 in hardware. The relatively soft thread grade, equally soft washers, coarse threads, and not quite 3/4 inch size means you don't get much pressing action with a mid-torque level of impact. With repeated attempts, most spiking up into the 2s, we get a 3.7 ton peak output. A high torque is able to get things to climb up to just 5.5 tons. And what happens here is the soft washers split, and the other one curls up over the hex head of the bolt, and you're not getting much progress after that. Impacting further after just removing one of the washers leads to this, and not a lot of further progress. Turns out you do need to make the plates out of something hardenable. To try to give this kit its best shot, we're going to, out of curiosity, put a standard grade 8 washer we had laying around on this to see what it can do. As 3/4 inch washers are a pretty cheap and common thing, unlike the rest of the parts in this kit, and this did, and should not be surprising, a lot of help to turn that bolt without impacting on chowdering things up. Really a small cost thing these sorts of brands overlook. We're seeing 7 tons with the high torque, and we get as much as 8.1 tons with the 3/4 inch monster. To see just where it could be as high as, you would need your own parts for it to make it this far, so it won't be getting the bonus points from this part of the testing. At this point, the only grade 5 bolt saw overall a lot of stretch and thread flattening and marring, which stopped further actual pressing despite more turning of the bolt. And for this whole 2 bolts thing, I don't know. If they're both grade 5, class 8.8 as they say it. Not sure how much further that really gets you. They maybe just should spend that money providing one grade 8 class 10.9 bolt and an extra 10 cents on 2 grade 8 washers, and this would be about twice as good. Frankly, it's shocking that so many people buy this set. Have to wonder how many of these reviews are legitimate versus based on experience. Moving on though to Harbor Freight Maddox. The Maddox had a surprise waiting for us inside. Boom, a 7/8 thread, like gold drive bolt. All these reviews mention 3/4 inch drive bolts in the set. The pictures show a black 3/4 inch drive bolt. Heck, even the artwork and packaging for this still show that. But inside must be a new update, larger 7/8 coarse thread, 7/8 thread hex nut, and adapters with all 7/8 holes in them. Likely all inspired by the AP set that uses those dimensions, 7/8, and the gold yellow zinc drive bolt. And this does now too. That yellow or gold zinc plated bolt normally denotes being a grade 8 or grade 9 hardware, which is sort of the idea going on here. We're also now getting phosphate coating, which is good, in what I'd call standard thick cups, what I'm used to seeing, which is like 4.5 millimeters or so on these smaller cups. And for instance, everything we've been seeing so far on these kits are on the thinner than what I've seen side, measuring 2.5 to just over 3 millimeters on the smaller cups, despite the same working inside diameter used. This will go towards part of their material score, like durability of parts and materials used. Let's see though how the Harbor Freight kit does. The downside of large coarse threads is a steeper hill to climb for your impact wrench when it turns those threads, but it does have other benefits like long-term durability when used with impacts and around other hard metal objects. In this case, it isn't helping a lower power impact all that much, maxing out at 5.2 tons. It's not all that much, but higher levels of abuse should start seeing the benefits of deeper, more engaged, larger diameter threads. We see as much as 8.8 tons with the high torque, and with the 3/4 inch, we're going to see a nice gain again, not quite as much as a 10-ton press, but close, and for sure the highest so far, especially considering the last set needed parts from you to do what it did, 9.8 tons. Additional attempts couldn't get up to 9 tons even again, and this is a result of good old-fashioned bolt stretch. The bolt is a full 1/8 of an inch longer than it was when we started out, which is pretty serious, and that is a result of the fact that despite the cups, washers, and plates and nut being all quite good, even grade 8 or grade 9 on the hex nut, the big 7/8 drive screw isn't. The head is 32.9 or about grade 5, not matching the yellow finish. It's sort of selling you on in the threads like where the bolt is on that end, like grade 4 at best or lower. They got almost there with all the stuff in this kit, which is mostly very good, except for the main show, the expensive piece to make right, the drive bolt. Still, that diameter is doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and despite the grade 4 bolt, did the best so far. Okay, and up next, if you like gold-plated looking parts, this is gonna be pay dirt for you. It's the Astro Heavy Duty Kit, their HD set, the 7825 HD. Now, it's important to take into account bias, no way to remove it completely on these sets, or well, anything tested on the channel, but of Astro included, of course. See description below, but by the numbers, this is a 25-piece set, unlike the 23 to 24 pieces on the first two kits, and 21 piece of the Maddox, and yeah, everything is yellow zinc plated. It fares pretty well, unlikely to scratch off and rust. It includes the thicker cups you'd expect from more expensive sets, is 7/8 threads on the bolt and nut. Adapters have 7/8 holes like the Maddox, and in this one's case, unique to it is it includes this XL thrust bearing inside in place of washers. Your impacting or wrench use is applied to a roller bearing rather than grinding against some washers, ideally resulting in more turning and pressing going on than generating heat and friction. It's not really that crazy though. Other brands do sell, like alone, a heavy duty bearing like this. They're designed to install wheel studs on 18-wheelers using a 1-inch impact wrench, using a big rig lug nut to pull it back onto the hub. But they are 7/8, 22 millimeters on the inside diameter, so you sort of need a large hex head and 7/8 threads like the Maddox now uses and this kit to take advantage of one of those. This set advertises a grade 9 drive screw, and we get a measurement of 48 HRC off of it, so that certainly qualifies. And after removing the plating, like usual, also grade 9 on the nut, and equivalent to grade 9 cup hardness as well. And grade 5 sort of hardness on the plates, again just using grades here to make it easier to follow. This is how it does. For these sorts of things, I like to use a motorcycle chain lube type of spray so it stays in there next time you go to use it. And whatever tool you're using, a large thrust bearing is a bit of a cheat code, assuming you don't turn it into confetti through impacting with a mid-torque, cycling it a few times, able to put up 7 tons of wheel bearing pressing power. The half-inch high torque is able to deliver more pressing power than any kit has been able to survive or accomplish with even the 3/4 inch drive impact. Not that this bearing will help the threads live any longer, just get you there sooner with less impacting. It is that 3/4 inch DeWalt though that's going to help propel this tool much higher than before. In fact, at just around 11.9 and never a touch over it, this impact is struggling and the bolts, the threads are still up to the task. Not dead yet, threading on and off just fine. So we're going to try to take this one step further with the 3/4 DeWalt and an 8 amp hour power pack on now instead of their 5 amp hour power stack, and just really serve her a hot plate of supper. Back and forth, basically just trying to damage something. At 12.8 tons, the impact really stalls out, at which point it won't go any further, and that bearing is smoking now, almost red hot, too hot to touch with even rubber coated gloves. Enough smoke that I think we'll call that good. But the bolt and nut, which are also too hot to hold, are still in working shape. That's likely due to the hardness, grade of the bolt and nut, diameter being 7/8, and importantly, thread engagement. Most of these sets, well, basically all of them have empty portions in the hex nut to quickly slide it onto the drive bolt on the back side of the hub without threading it down a million times. But they also have very short or minimal threads total in there in some cases, which is less manufacturing time. So this set is spreading that 12 tons of pressing, squeezing force over twice the threads, which, I mean, it helps not nuke things prematurely. Just by the numbers, in an easily verifiable way, it gets up there. Not easy to kill at all if you want to give it a go yourself. All right, and up next is Powerbuilt, that all-trade brand at $150. This is one of the more popular, well-reviewed sets in the highest sort of price range. This kit and case does look unique, or not like most others, and it's made in Taiwan here, which is a first. Also a first in this order of sets we're showing you is fine threads. They measure 3/4 inch in this case, with sort of an interesting bolt head as well. It's a hex nut welded to the top of this threaded rod. These threads are on the upper end of grade 8, maybe even grade 9 level, so it must be some hardened all thread or just cheaper to machine this smaller 3/4 inch diameter than machine it down from a larger piece with that head included. The hex nut is also similar grade, as well as the plates, which is very nice. The washers are grade 5 and the cups are the only downside. They're both the thinner type and not hardened. Let's see how she do. The upside of finer threads is they should take less torque to turn, shallower ramp to twist, and a larger cross-sectional minimum diameter, so harder to break or stretch. But with parts that bang and clang around and using an impact on them in general, they can often get deformed a lot easier from repeated use or just rubbing and hitting against other stuff. It's easier for two thread peaks to meet and cross thread compared to large coarse threads that can flatten but still not strip out as easily. And this is, we're showing you here, even the Maddox made to soft 7/8 bolt. So there's pros and cons of both routes. The Powerbuilt, thanks in part to this design, despite using simple grade 5 washers, gets up to 6.2 tons of bearing pressing power with the mid torque. The high torque gets things moving up to eventually 8 tons, but it's also enough to cause the not so hard washer to start to curl up around the bolt head like crater in. It was able to graduate to the 3/4 inch monster, and this is where it was able to pile on just 8.5 tons before the hex on the head of the bolt rounded off. This was its best washer and plate combo, as the plates are actually harder than the washers, so no need to double up on them and try to give it a better shot, but it really leaves you not much meat on here with this type of washer failure type. And that's due to, in part, the bolt head or the welded hex being super soft on this. We measured just 15.3 HRC or grade 1. We think they used maybe a grade 5 or grade 8 hex to weld onto there, but it completely lost its temper when you weld with this much heat, which causes this, a soft hex, not up to the task for the long haul. On to the next one though, OEM Tools we bought from AutoZone. Our local AutoZone's tool rental loaner program was pretty much 100% OEM Tools brand, so since we intended to push these tools into the grave, instead of renting one, we bought a set to see what kind of experience we would be having with it, how easily it would be to kill one basically. And this was $250 for some reason, so yeah, you'd really be hoping you don't have to replace it. This is a lot like the Powerbuilt, same 3/4 inch fine thread, same 28mm hex nut welded on the top of these. I don't know why every kit has to have a different hex size, but they seem to. Finish on the plates look worse than the Powerbuilt, but there are a lot of similarities in the hardness of the various included parts. They both use thinner than ideal cups as well, and it starts off much like the Powerbuilt as well for twice the price for some reason than that Powerbuilt. Gotta encourage you to bring it back, I suppose. This put up 6.3 tons with the mid torque, which is quite good. And with the high torque, things go a bit sideways on this. Using the same amount of high pressure grease on the threads and at the bolt head as all the others, after the third increase and then loosening of the bolt, which we do for each of them at least, this happened.
Oh no. When it drops going forward, never a good sign.
Fully pulled the threads. With the hex nut in this one's set, it's like a case of cheap bed sheets, not high enough thread count. Harder washers and more threads on this hex nut I think would make this kit do much better. We're talking an extra like $1 in manufacturing. I mean, it's $250 already, seems like should be considered. But if $250 is not your speed, try $800. Well, it's $800 for the full OTC hub grappler kit, which we have here, and that comes with the hub puller assembly and a couple of bits. Those seem to all sell for $210 by themselves, so minus that, we're looking at roughly a $590 kit from OTC as a bearing service set. This has the thicker class of cups and some really trick washers, machined matching concave and convex pieces that spin on each other. You use them both out in front of the bolt head, like stacking two washers, and we're going to naturally grease in between each one of those layers so the pieces that freely rotate on each other also play nicely. This is a smart and low cost way in manufacturing to make a big improvement. And then this is also by far clearly the best drive bolts as well. Design and materials wise, it's 3/4 inch thread, sure, but they start with a large diameter stock, so there's area to spread that force over onto the washers, and then machine it down to 1-inch hex so you can use a smaller, more likely to already own impact socket with this rather than 32mm 1 1/4 or whatever. Some time went into forging and machining this, as it seems from what we can tell is its hardness is beyond that of grade 9, or like basically a Bow Malloy class bolt or better in hardness, 60.6 HRC. Assuming this doesn't shatter, that's some costly stuff to be used in a set like this. And the machined washers that skate on each other are also rock hard, which makes a lot of sense, about 63 Rockwell C. The plates and cups specifically are all grade 1, low hardness oddly, but let's see how she gets on. Between the fine threads and rock hard bolts and concave washers, this makes for a lot of pressing power without a lot of impacting. 7.8 tons from a mid torque, best yet, very good. With the high torque, it was oddly starting to fight with itself around 7 tons. Even though it's the high torque, it should be making more, which was odd. So we reapplied grease to the 2 washer set up front, and that seems to be what it needed. And we saw an improvement up to 8.9 tons for the 1/2-inch M18 2967. Using the 3/4 inch gun gets easily into the 9s, but then gets stuck sometimes on that socket. That hex head on the bolt is tapered a bit, so you'll need to free it up once in a while and get that socket unstuck, which helps when you're impacting. This gets things up to 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, 9.8, 9.9 tons, and then the dreaded lots of spinning forward, but less and less pressing power. This to you would feel like the bearing was moving in, but it's simply the threads in this case pulling mainly out of the hex nut end, as it's In this case, much softer than the bolt. Still like grade 8, grade 9 maybe levels, but no match for the hardness of that bolt. And that happens much sooner. Again, I mean, keep talking about it, in part due to another case of maybe the most dramatic yet use of minimal threads in an extra long hex nut. You have this long a piece of hardware and just 20 to 25% of that's threaded for holding back 10 tons. This kit, more than any of the others, with double the threads in there and maybe a little harder hex nut in general, could take the whole cake on the day. It's made out of some serious stuff. Let's rank these kits already. It's been a longer one than we anticipated. Here's how much each of them made in their stock form with just grease applied, with each impact wrench. Like if you own just one of these, how much it could do for you. They get ranked based on those results, and that comparative ranking looks like this. Though this one did do much better with our own grade 8 washer than what it's showing, of course. Next is durability of the included parts as we see it, hardness and thickness of cups, which looks all like this if you want to see it. That earns them an average ranking that looks all like these. The OTC would have taken it overall if its plates were hardened. Then lastly, probably why you're here, you want to see how much pressing tons each of these can do. Turns out, not as much as a 20-ton shop press, but in some cases better than a 10-ton, so that's quite a lot. All of this, including their ranking for price, as these are not lifetime toolkits, works out to, in lowers best, 3.3 for Winmax, 4.75 for Orion Motor Tech, then 3 flat, 1.91, 3.92, 4.75, and 2.98, placing it in this ordering. That thrust bearing is really a cheat code, if the bolt can take it, and the $50 kit, really not doing too poorly at all, being the cheapest by far. This looks a lot closer due to OTC's sky-high price. Without accounting for price, these points would be 1.21, then 1.63, and still 3 flat for the Maddox. We, of course, used the impact wrenches we thought would get results or kill them, but we're basically trying to accelerate the lifetime process of these tools. Appreciate you joining us today. These are really some quite useful sets for replacing wheel bearings without needing an alignment after. Hopefully, as a result of this video, brands can also make cheap, easy improvements as we've laid out for them here. Thank you for watching.